and I listen to Jessica. So if it goes wrong, this is Jessica. We are calling the meeting to order, and Mr. Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Berg. Senator Boswell. Here. Senator Deneen.
Here.
Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith.
Present.
Senator Smith. Senator Westerfield. Senator Williams. Senator Wilson.
Here.
Representative Blanton.
Here.
Representative Bojanowski. Representative Bratcher.
Here.
Representative Dietz.
Here.
Representative Dossett. Representative Freeland. Representative Fugit.
Here.
Representative Gooch.
Here.
Representative Hart.
Here.
Representative Johnson. Representative Cook. Representative Lewis. Representative Maddox.
Here.
Representative Massaroni.
Here.
Representative Proctor.
Present.
Representative Raymer.
Here.
Representative Sharp.
Present.
Representative Stalker.
Present.
Representative Stevenson. Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Wesley.
Here.
Representative Thomas.
Present.
Chair Girdler.
Here. All right. We're going to do as we always do in the VMAPs, have a Pledge of Allegiance and then prayer afterwards. And Brother Meredith is going to lead us in the pledge. And now Senator Wilson's going to lead us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we thank you. Thank you for your grace, your mercy, your love, and your direction. We ask for your wisdom, that you would be with us, Holy Spirit, and lead and guide us, and especially in the decisions that we make for this Commonwealth and our constituents. May it always be your Spirit that we listen to more than we listen to man, and we will be blessed above all nations. We love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right. If I can get a motion for the approval of the minutes. We got a motion, Senator Boswell, second by Senator Deneen. If no one objects, we'll consider them approved. First of all, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Deneen, and we're going to honor some veterans here real quick.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge with us today we have several veterans from the American Legion Post 113 in Elizabethtown, and we also have veterans here with us from one of our largest VFWs there in Vine Grove. So if they would please, if you're here today with us, would you please stand? Our veterans that came up today for those areas. We're honored to have you, and we thank you for your service, and God bless you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you all. Appreciate the veterans. If I can get the Kentucky Veterans Accelerated License, Occupational, or VALOR, come and introduce yourself in about 10 or 12 minutes if you can, and a couple of minutes of questions, and then so you may proceed.
We forgot to do the minutes. So once they want to pull that up? Okay, sorry. Hit the. There we go. Thank you all for having us here today. My name is Molly Bodie, and I am the Executive Director of Kentucky VALOR, which is an initiative of Kentucky Science and Technology Corporation.
I'm Terry Samuel, the president of the parent KSTC.
So what does Kentucky VALOR stand for? Kentucky VALOR stands for Kentucky Veterans Accelerated Licensure Occupational Recruitment. And I want to give a big shout out to Jessica Zay here, as she is the one that helped to name this program. But this initiative followed a 4-year 2018 federal Department of Labor grant that Kentucky was one of 3 states to receive. Under this grant, which was named VALO, which stood for Veterans Accelerated Learning for Licensed Occupations, our team was tasked with creating accelerated pathways to civilian licensure that credited the education and experience obtained in the military. Essentially, we were trying to eliminate the need for a service member to have to start over when entering the civilian sector. Let me give you a quick example of how those accelerated pathways work here in Kentucky. Prior to VALO, 68 Whiskey or an Army medic coming out of the military would have to completely start over with civilian training in order to receive an EMT license. After VALO, our team worked with the Kentucky Board of Emergency Medical Services to credit the education they received in 68 Whiskey training and their experience in the military so that it would be directly applicable to advanced EMT licensure here in the state. If they wish to pursue a paramedic licensure, they can then go to a KCTCS location around their state and find a bridge program so they can get the next level of licensure. We ended the VALO grant in June of 2022 and successfully created over 44 accelerated pathways that cover 55 levels of licensure or categories of civilian licensure and span over 180 different military occupational specialties. Following VALO, Terry actually met with Representative Johnson, who saw the opportunity to capitalize on this federal investment in order to benefit Kentucky and Kentucky's employment challenges. In fact, the federal Department of Labor intended on this initiative resulting in a state-specific program that could be utilized for veterans and for Kentucky workforce alike. Oops.
Yep.
So that is exactly how this program works. It's just that we work to match Kentucky workforce needs with transitioning service members and their families. On the Kentucky workforce side, you'll see on the next slide a sampling of our workforce partnerships, but we tend to focus on 3 key areas: workforce development organizations, institutes of higher education, and private companies. On the veteran side, we then attract service members and their families from across the nation to pair them to Kentucky jobs. While an emphasis of ours is to put them in purposeful careers utilizing those accelerated pathways, we are open to any veteran in any job. As I'm sure this particular committee is well aware, the unique aspect of the veteran talent pool is that veterans know how to work, they know how to take direction, and they have good skills that should be utilized by employers here in the state of Kentucky. In such, moving towards the bottom of this slide, the essence of this program, Kentucky VALOR, not only benefits the post-service careers of military members and their families, but works to concurrently address workforce issues throughout the Commonwealth. So as I mentioned previously, we have 3 channels to reach employers. The first is government workforce initiatives. Currently, we have partnered with 67 entities and are adding to this number weekly. A few of those you can see on this slide here. Specifically with these partnerships, our team is not looking to recreate the wheel of what already exists within Kentucky. For example, we work closely with the Kentucky Chamber as we are able to supplement their talent pipeline. We're able to provide assistance for any veteran needing assistance obtaining occupational licensure, while they help us navigate industry-specific needs, connect us to their members, and facilitate workforce opportunities throughout the whole state. Second, we are working with our state colleges and universities. We have the 5 partnerships listed below and are eagerly working to build relationships with the 4 remaining colleges. And lastly, we work directly with employers. We currently have 160 direct employer partnerships, and a small sample of those partnerships are illustrated here. One highlight that I would like to give are the workforce needs within our aviation industry. Working with companies such as UPS, Amazon, CVG, and FEAM Aero, I've found that there's a vast need for folks to both fly and maintain the aircraft. CVG and FEME Aero in Northern Kentucky alone need 2,500 licensed A&P mechanics within the next few years. In the last few months, we have helped 3 Air Force veterans obtain both ratings, and they are now located in Northern Kentucky and employed with FEME Aero. We have several more that are within our pipeline and currently navigating this pathway. So as I just described, the second piece of this program is recruiting veterans. We maintain a weekly presence at Fort Knox and Fort Campbell and have been to 19 bases across the country, which encompass installations from all 4 service branches. When we are there and we are speaking to a service member who is beginning to transition out of the military, we have found that they tend to lean towards one of 3 paths. The first is staying close to where they are now. They may have a spouse and family that are already integrated into the community surrounding the base they are transitioning out of. That is why we maintain the presence that we do at Fort Knox and Fort Campbell to help retain the folks that are already here. The second group of people are interested in going back home to where they were prior to entering the service. And then the third are open to moving anywhere for the right opportunity. Now, what we find when we engage with all 3 groups of people is folks just may not be aware of the good jobs and opportunities that exist in Kentucky. Upon talking about the accelerated pathways that credit their experience, knowing that they do not necessarily have to start over in order to pursue a career in the civilian sector, and the fact that we do the legwork of connecting them and their spouse with employers within their own career field, many become interested in making Kentucky home. When speaking to a retiree out of Fort Knox and asking him what his deciding factors were, he told me, "Molly, if you can help me get a good job and make my wife happy, I'm in." You know, I found that this sentiment was not too far from the truth when talking to folks outside of Kentucky as well. I've been successful in finding people from other bases that want to come back home to Kentucky and are eager to have our help. And then also those that fall into that third category, those who are open to relocating anywhere and are now considering the state of Kentucky. Particularly at bases such as Fort Sam Houston, Joint Base Lewis McChord, and Pearl Harbor, where there are much higher costs of living, the opportunities provided by Kentucky VALOR, Kentucky employers, and the economy within the state of Kentucky prove to be valuable factors for relocation for military families. All right, so through the first portion of the program, we have learned some valuable lessons. When we started VALOR, someone transitioning out of the military began the process by taking classes at their base's TAP office between 6 and 12 months before they actually exited the military. In January of this year, the Department of Defense moved this timeline back to 24 months, meaning that service members may begin transition assistance programs up to 2 years prior to leaving the military. On one hand, this change has allowed us to access folks earlier, but it has hurt our short-term metrics. We have several people in the pipeline that we've begun to case manage and will remain in contact with, but may not be scheduled to transition until 2024 or 2025. We have also learned that the processes and procedures of TAP programs vary widely from base to base. Some bases like Fort Knox and Fort Campbell hold weekly employer days. Other bases only hold annual large hiring events or only virtual events. And some, such as all of the bases within the state of Virginia, do not allow any outside entities to participate. Additionally, some bases only exclusively contract with third-party entities that charge employers and organizations such as us to attend. Membership with these entities costs up to $225,000 a year. At this point, we do not feel that we need to pay into those third-party entities. We have taken the time to build enough other relationships with the bases themselves that have proved to be successful in access. And then lastly, we have learned that some of our younger service members take a little bit more career counseling upon exiting the military. It's often too frequent that I meet with a 1 or 2 termer out of Fort Campbell, and I ask him, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I get two answers. I have no idea, or I want to be a pilot, HVAC technician, and a nurse. And which, as all of you know, are very different career choices. So for those folks, it's taken us a little bit longer to case manage, to walk them through each of those career choices, compare them with their military MOS and what may be offered through Kentucky VALOR Accelerated Pathways. And all of that is done prior to them getting ready for the job market. Therefore, naturally, these guys tend to be in our pipeline a little bit longer than expected and are slower to place. So although all 3 of these challenges were unexpected when we started this program, we feel that we've successfully adapted and we continue to build momentum in establishing this pipeline. So let me take you to the numbers. We have 4 key measurement points: who is in our database, who is active in case management, who is currently interviewing or pursuing a license, and who are placed in jobs. If you look at the top of the funnel, we are building a lot of momentum. Dropping to the second box, let me explain what that is. This number represents folks who are actively engaged with us looking for employment and have shown genuine interest in a Kentucky job. We have found that the movement from box 1 to 2 is what has been negatively impacted due to that DoD change in January that I mentioned on the previous slide. However, we will remain in contact with them. We case manage through the entire process and utilize this time to create an individualized plan. And once they are closer to transitioning out, they move down to the next box, the third box, which indicates that they are already actively interviewing or pursuing a license, and oftentimes both at the same time. And finally, in the last box, we currently have placed 26 positions, and several in our pipeline are incredibly close to placement. This number is steadily rising and has grown by 50% since we last briefed Representative Johnson in late September. So to give you a little bit more details on the pipeline stats, 42% of the service members within our database are retained from Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. 43% of service members have a transition date of 2023, so more than half are yet to come. And our numbers do reflect spouses and family members that we have placed. How we are really beginning to be known as a resource for service members, but we have been increasing our efforts and presence at each base's spousal and family centers to further ensure that both active duty and veteran spouses may take advantage of the program as well. So let me talk about where we go from here. We have met with Representative Johnson, Chairman Petrie, and some of you individually within this room to talk about funding VALOR in the upcoming general session. So why do we think that VALOR is a worthwhile investment for the General Assembly to consider? Number 1, we have been incredibly successful in establishing this foundation, networking, building contacts, and building this pipeline. Number 2, we are building the momentum. We have names in our pipeline and are moving people through that funnel. And number 3, we are starting to do some long-term planning where we can supplement the state dollars with private funding in order to sustain the program. We are exploring models that will maintain the best interests of both veteran families and Kentucky employers while providing a fiscally responsible future for Kentucky VALOR. Here is what we've spent so far. The General Assembly has funded us $1 million over the biennium. After the first year, we spent $368,000. Right now, we estimate by the end of the biennium, we will have a surplus of around $260,000. As we look to the next biennium, we estimate a need of $963 for staff and travel-related expenses, $206 for other and indirect expenses. And when you remove our expected surplus, that leaves us with a funding request of $909 for the continuation of this program. I really do want to thank you all for giving me the time today to talk about this program and present on what we have been doing and having us here today. I would also like to extend an early Veterans Day thank you to all of the veterans here in the room. And if you happen to be in the Louisville area for the Week of Valor this week and the Veterans Day Parade, please come find us. We will have a table on the parade route. So thank you so much.
You're pretty smart to let the young lady do all the talking. Representative Johnson's got a question, or I heard you reference his name a couple of times, so he may have more than a question.
Just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief, though. First off, I wanted to emphasize one thing that you said. First off, I want to thank you for the presentation and your work, because I know what you're doing. But I wanted to emphasize one thing, Molly, that you said, and that was when the soldier answered your question. One of the primary criteria was make my wife happy. We'll never forget that. And in line with that, one of the other initiatives we're working on is the compact initiatives, which I'm hoping at some point the chairman will allow us to give a briefing to the committee on that as well. So we're not just looking at soldiers, we're looking at families. I wanted to comment very briefly on the pipeline, and I know you guys had hoped for bigger numbers, but it's kind of like a jet airplane taking off the runway. You know, it takes full power for a while before you can hit cruising, and I know you guys are getting there, so keep doing what you're doing. And I do have a question. Is the program, can you guys work with veterans that have been out for a while, or is it strictly ones that are ETSing right now?
We can work with anybody. I will say some of the accelerated pathways to obtain licensure have caps on that you had to have graduated from the 68 whiskey program within the last 6 to 10 years to be relevant, but we will help anybody find a job.
So, and I asked that question for the benefit of the veterans that are in the room. I would ask you guys, when you go back home, please let people know about this program. And I'm assuming that there's a website that they can go to. Is it
Yes.
Valor?
kyvalor.com.
Say again?
kyvalor.com.
So if you guys could help us spread the word, we can reach more guys out there, more gals that are looking for either a new job or new skill sets that they can use what they had in the military. We need you guys. So if you would please reach out to the people back home, we'd appreciate it. I think that's it, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Y'all, any more questions? Representative Bratcher.
I'll just have
Sure.
a comment.
Boswell. Well, we got another one over there too, so.
Oh, thank you for your program. One thing that I heard you say, and I think it's definitely a real concern, and I think you're making a lot of progress here, is in regard to people who have experience in these various areas, and the education that they have is not credited. And to me, that is probably the most important thing that you're talking about.
If I can just add one thing to that is, one of the things we know, regardless of branch, if you were trained in the U.S., Germany, Korea, wherever that base is throughout the world, military training is top-notch and very consistent. You know, so if you're Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, you know, wherever you are in the world, if you're a 68 whiskey, if you're a medic, that training is top-notch and it's very consistent. We want to take advantage of that in Kentucky.
Representative Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Have a question. You were talking about going to some of these bases and you'd have to pay third-party entities. Who are these third-party entities?
Some examples of those are Recruit Military, DAV. Entities like that are subcontracted out by SFL TAP at certain bases, and they are who hold the hiring events at some bases.
So then you have to pay them to go
access
to the
hiring events or access the transition assistance office, period, sometimes.
That's interesting. You'd think that wouldn't take place.
I question the ethics there.
Yeah, me too. That's why I'm asking the question, who are these third-party entities?
Right.
Then what do they do with the money? So that's something I'm sure
Right.
needs to be looked into. Thank
Really,
you.
that is why I've worked very hard to build those relationships outside of those entities. There are some national organizations, such as Hiring Our Heroes, that do not do the same thing and do not charge. So I've worked really hard to build a great relationship with them, great relationship with the unique bases that do offer outside entities to come in and don't contract out to these third parties. I think we can do without them.
Any of those bases in Kentucky?
both Fort Knox and Fort Campbell are independent of outside organizations.
So there's no third-party
Correct.
entities? Okay,
Correct.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Well, I think one of the things that I found amazing when we got into this is you would think every base is the same. That would be a copy exact model that DoD would put out, and it's not. So I think the base commander has a lot of latitude, and in some cases they're using third parties. As Molly mentioned, in Virginia, you can't go to a base in Virginia. And oh, by the way, there's a lot of bases in Virginia. You can't go into a base in Virginia unless you're a Virginia employer.
Or one of these third parties that
Or
you
one
have
of
to pay
the
for.
parties, yeah.
So the question I had, the next question I have, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, is have you contacted the Department of Army, Navy, or Air Force IG's office, or even the DoD IG's office about this?
I have not, but I do think that's a good idea. However, the SFL TAP contract in and of itself is a contract out of DoD. So it's kind of a contract doing another third-party contract to removed from DoD.
Okay.
SFL TAP, for everybody, is Soldiers for Life Transition Assistance Program.
Well, I think if you go to talk to the DoD IG or whomever, I think this committee will support you 100%.
I would be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Harper, Senator Harper Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This committee certainly appreciates any efforts on behalf of our veterans, but could you elaborate on your funding request of 4 staff, travel fringes plus 2 pluses at $963,000? Could you break that out as to staff salary versus the balance?
I don't have it on the top of my head, but let me explain the 4 staff, right? Molly, Nikki in the back is the employment. We'll have a recruiter and then a case manager. Is not exactly in those 4 buckets, but that it's a small team, Molly, and then a team of 3, 1 outbound to bases, 1 working with employers, and then 1 doing case management. Our fringe rate, our benefits rate is about 33%, and that's all in health, vision, et cetera, right? All of that. Our indirect rate is 16% to the state. So we're fairly lean compared to some of I work a lot with the universities, which would have a much higher. And then on top of that, there's software, other marketing materials and those type of things. So those are the big buckets. We can come back to you with the specific numbers in the request of how we built it up.
I'd really like to see the breakdown of just what the salaries are
Okay.
of those people.
Yep.
And also, do you have a cost per job? What each job has cost in the past based on the numbers that you said were successes?
Yes, and as Representative Johnson mentioned, originally we thought by this point we were too aggressive. Totally admit that. Took a little bit longer to get started. I would also add to that, I think we were fiscally prudent in the first year of not spending all of our money just because it was there. So it took us a little bit longer to ramp up. We did think we'd be further along, and we sort of had an estimate in the range of say, $4,000 to $5,000 a job. We are not there because the denominator, although we've managed it, is still a lot higher than the numerator would be. So ultimately, when we get to the job numbers that we're looking to be, I think our cost per job will be very competitive. Molly, you might add.
Yeah, I'll add
Indiana and the.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. Some of other states that do have similar programs to us without the accelerated pathways. Indiana has a team of 15, largely funded by the state, and their metrics look at around 500 job placements per year. Wisconsin has another similar effort, and they're happy with they have a team of 2, and they're happy with about 130 a year. I'm currently working on a model that further breaks down what the ROI is on this investment and folks in job, both not only in what they're making, but if their spouse is also working here, if they're spending money in here, the taxes, where we can, put everything in a nice shiny bow to present to you. I just do not have that ready today, unfortunately.
Thank you. I look forward to the follow-up. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Stalker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question was asked previously about if these programs are only limited to folks who are currently exiting, or if it's extended to people who have already been out for several years potentially. And you said that yes, you're willing to work with any veteran.
Correct.
My question is under your slide with developed workforce partnerships, a sector that I see missing is our nonprofit sector, who oftentimes is doing the majority of our very heavy lifting for our veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to know what partnerships, if any, have you tried to engage across? If you could speak to that, thank you.
Yes, of course. We are always eager to partner with nonprofits. We are one ourselves. So any veteran service organization we work with, and I know this is an entity of, government organization. We work with career centers. We work with veteran club organizations. We work with, trying to think of, Nikki handles largely this area, so I don't know if she has any to add in the nonprofit sector. But we try to reach anybody that we can, and we welcome any partnerships, whether that be a nonprofit or something that's more integrated into the government sector.
Senator Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over here.
I see it.
Do you have anyone who will not consider retiring in Kentucky because they're going to have to pay a portion of their income, their retirement pay, as income tax?
Yes, I do. That is I'm sure you all are more aware of this than I am, but that's a big hot topic when traveling outside of Kentucky. Is one of the first questions that I'm asked, in fact. Sometimes we can mitigate that with the cost of living conversation, but moving Kentucky towards a state that does not tax the pension of veterans would be a game changer for us.
Yeah, I asked that question because my son, because he has a Kentucky roots, is retiring here after 21 years. His college roommate, who actually went to college in Kentucky, will not consider retiring in Kentucky because of that. Mm-hmm. I just had a conversation with him this weekend.
Yeah, I've had conversations with several people currently out of state that say, Molly, let us know when that legislation passes and we'll be there. So that's something that we are highly in favor of.
The other thing that Molly has shared with me, working with Fort Campbell, is obviously Campbell's on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. And there's been transitioning service members in Tennessee that are like, I think I'm just going to stay in Tennessee because of that.
Go ahead. Yeah. Representative Dossett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was a question I wanted to ask you. How do we compare with what Tennessee does on their transitioning program? I know with Fort Campbell, many of those young people that are coming out of the service, they are going to Tennessee during their transitioning. Those jobs that they're are taking training on, which the federal government pays for, HVAC, plumbing, those type of positions that are available. And I know I have encouraged our local community colleges there in Hopkinsville and in Madisonville, and they have been working with Fort Campbell to encourage those young people to come across to Kentucky to do that training for their transition, to encourage them to want to stay in Kentucky, because with Fort Campbell, the training taking place in Tennessee, so they and they see the difference in the income tax and sales tax. That's one of the reasons they do stay in Tennessee. But I was wondering how we do compare with what they're doing.
I just have to echo everything that you said. Yes, I see that too, and I would like to let you know that I have seen Hopkinsville Community College at Fort Campbell advocating for these programs, and we work with them closely as well. I think in comparison, we really need to push the fact that we have accelerated pathways here in Kentucky for HVAC, for electrician, they can start prior to exiting the military. They can do SkillBridge type placements they don't have to wait until they get out. I have had, but you're right, there's a lot of noise that the only option for Fort Campbell is to take advantage of those sort of things in Tennessee. I've had several people that have done that, been unsuccessful with it, and have called me and said, I'm up for being, in fact, it was an HVAC technician that we helped get licensed in the state of Kentucky after he had already accepted a job in Clarksville and now works in Hopkinsville. So I think it's part of that answer may just be time of letting folks know what exists here and helping to change that narrative.
Plus, just a very quick add, we also have the pathways. Tennessee doesn't have the pathways. So when the feds funded VALO, it was Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Kentucky. That's it. So that's a big plus for us. We have to overcome some of the tax and other issues, but we do have those pathways, especially for someone in HVAC.
Go ahead.
Please let us know as with myself representing Fort Campbell. I know Chairman Thomas there in Hopkinsville. Let us know what we can do to help on this. I know personally there where I live at, we have many veterans or military personnel that choose my little home community, and I have mentioned this to them. And as I said, I have spoken with both our presidents at our community colleges about this program, what they were doing there with Fort Campbell over the last 10 years as I've become familiar with young people coming out and transitioning and taking those. So let us know what we can do to help encourage those personnel to look at what we can provide here on this side of the border.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you all. If you all hang around afterwards, there may be some more questions or suggestions. And Molly, there's a lot of us up here that have no idea what we're going to be when we grow up. So if you've got that answer, you need to wait around and talk to us.
Well, I'm happy to help.
All right. As they are exiting, we're going to have Kyle Holyman. All right. I like the last one myself.
My answer to that.
The first one. And I advised him to leave Chris Nolan in his seat because his chances of getting to talk to us are better by himself. You may proceed, holy man, or ever how.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, folks. All right. My name's Kyle. Here we go. We're back on. Good morning, folks. My name's Kyle Hoylman, or Holy Man, whichever you prefer. I chair the Board of Radon Safety for our state, and I'm here today to give you an update as to what we've been up to since we last addressed this committee last year. I'll start with the scorecard for the state of Kentucky. There is a scorecard that exists for every state. Unfortunately, our state, we lead the nation in both lung cancer incident as well as mortality rates. We're hopeful that we can overcome some of this sooner than later. Radon is a major contributing factor to our lung cancer problem in our state. You can see here we had approximately 4,800 lung cancer cases last year. Roughly 1,000 of those, or about 20%, are attributable or expected to be attributable to radon or the synergies between radon and secondhand smoke. That comes at a pretty significant price tag. You can see that just the medical costs are estimated to be over $200 million per year alone. And I will point out that a lot of those costs are actually taken on by us through our Medicaid and Medicare system. And then the economic impact as well is estimated to be another $200 million. So we have a real opportunity here in our state. There are three things that have been identified through the Kentucky Cancer Consortium in lung cancer prevention: smoking cessation, low cost or low dose CT scanning, and radon testing and mitigation. So those are our three ways that we can prevent lung cancer instead of treat lung cancer. Over here to the right, you'll see that 44% of homes and buildings that are tested in our state actually contain toxic levels or levels of radon above the EPA action level, which is 4.0 picocuries. Here in Kentucky, that number is quite high. The national average, as estimated by the U.S. EPA, is 7 to 8%. So we are many times greater than other states that are testing, and this is a CDC number. And then lastly, radon does not exist building in soil gas control systems in new construction. So what's happening in our state, you see here that last year we had roughly 12,000 new residential properties built in our state. We are going backwards every year. Industry is not fixing or mitigating buildings, existing buildings, faster than we're constructing new buildings. So our state is actually getting worse every year from a radon-induced lung cancer standpoint. That prompted this group back in 2022 through House Bill 77 to establish the Board of Radon Safety. It resides under the Department of Professional Licensing within the Public Protection Cabinet. The effective date for that board was July 14th of last year. It's comprised of 5 voting members and 2 non-voting members. The 2 non-voting members represent the home builders and the real estate industries in our state. The duties of this board would include to promote the control of radon in Kentucky, to oversee the educational and awareness campaigns, and to administer and receive grants related to radon, which there are several in our state that we're working on. As far as priorities, again, as chair of the committee, I've started to focus on certain priorities, and I'll share today with you that these are some of the priorities that I'm looking to push forward within our committee. Our regulatory program needs to comply with the U.S. EPA proposed radon credentialing criteria. There's new criteria coming out from EPA that impacts how states, and Kentucky is the largest recipient of EPA funds for SURGE, the State Indoor Radon Grant Fund. And it's because, again, we're number one with lung cancer incident and mortality. We also receive the largest percentage of funds through that EPA. It's a very modest amount. It's a very modest amount. But it is something that they're putting criteria around. And the board is positioning itself through its credentialing program to make sure that we're not in jeopardy of losing those funds. We want to promulgate the regulations to administer and support statutes that are currently on the books. We want to implement a field inspection and desk audit program. I'll point to our friends up in Indiana. They have an audit and desk compliance program that's in place. The first year, 97% of mitigation systems installed in that state contain one major deficiency, with 2 house fires started. A year later, less than 10%. So this was a compliance program that was put into place, and we're seeing Indiana going in the right direction with the contractors actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. We would seek to partner with an organization like the American Lung Association. It's important that the voice of public health be at the table. The American Lung Association, and I'll point out that could be a similar public health organization. The reason that I have American Lung Association here is multiple states also lean on the ALA for administering SURGE dollars, and we would look to tap into that expertise to make sure that public health stays front and center with our board. We'd like to make sure that we're providing low-cost test kit devices. And the purpose of that is just to encourage occupants of these buildings to make sure that they understand the risks so that they can take action if action is necessary. There is a disparity from a health equity consideration. We'd like to see some of the funds that we bring into the board used to develop a low-cost, no-cost mitigation fund. We believe that all homeowners should have the right to breathing healthy and safe air. And then finally, we would look to engage with school officials to make sure that our youngest population are being protected, as well as the folks who work in those facilities and teach that population, and to make sure that home builders and real estate agents are engaged to provide education and awareness so that we're all working together to prevent radon-induced lung cancer in our state. I mentioned I was in last year, right after the board was formed. We're now a little over a year, and I just want to go through the timeline of some of the things that have happened so that you can see what we've been up to within the board. August 17th, that was the first meeting of the board after the July 14th effective date, so we didn't sit around. We got to work right away. We directed PPC to notify the governor's office that the Board of Radon Safety stood ready to transition those state indoor radon grant funds in accordance with the statute. In September, we had our next follow-up meeting. We established a website, radon.ky.gov, which is an easy portal for consumers to get to looking for information about radon and radon-induced lung cancer and how to prevent that in their own homes. At that point, there was a request for a budget proposal from the PPC. During the October 11th meeting, we did present and review that draft budget, and at that point it was formally submitted to the PPC for consideration. In January, there was no update on the budget proposal. However, the board had started to receive complaints from concerned citizens about functionality and was their system installed correctly, things of that nature. At that point, there was a motion carried to form a standing complaints committee, and that committee is officially up and running, although we're not in a position to actually react or review complaints at this point in time. In March, there was a resolution 69 that directed the governor's office to certify the Board of Radon Safety as the agency of record, which is needed for EPA to actually transition those funds to the Board of Radon Safety. During the April meeting, again, there was no update on the budget or the surge transition. Without funding, we can't do our work, and so we were encouraging that interim funding to allow us to promulgate regulations. This is a contractor industry, so those regulations would allow us to receive fees to certify those contractors, and the surge funding would also help to offset some of those challenges. What we need is to be able to enter into the agreements with PPC to allow us the administrative support as well as the legal support to get this stuff done. At that time in April, the Public Protection and Cabinet did advise that council would be needed to assist with promulgating complaints before any action could be taken. So we have consumer complaints in the queue that are simply in the queue. We're taking no action because we do not have the legal support to move forward. In April, there was an ad hoc committee appointed to draft administrative regulations. We chose to get started on at least drafting those regulations. We also appointed an ad hoc committee to oversee the transition of the surge funding from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to the Board of Radon and Safety. In May, we did receive a request from the governor's office for the plan and the outline for making that transition take place. And in May, the ad hoc committees started their work with the surge plan. That plan then later was submitted to the governor's office for how those funds and how that transition would take place. And then in June or in July, we started continuing meetings with the Administrative Regulations Committee. So the regs are ready, the draft is ready, or will be ready in a short period of time once we have the legal support to start to move those back through the Legislative Review Committee and whatnot. And at this point, the administrative regulations are tabled until we can get those agreements in place. During the July meeting, again, there was no update on the budget proposal or the surge transition. And in October, we made the decision, unfortunately, to cancel the board meeting because at this point, the board has gone as far as it can go with its work until we resolve these issues of funding. Additional outreach to the governor's executive cabinet have been made, but I am able to say that we've been notified that this agency of record is in process, and I would anticipate having this documentation in place sooner than later, working with the executive, excuse me, the executive cabinet to get the funds over, at which time we can resume the work of the committee. And with that, I think that's a quick year at a glance. A lot's going on. Again, I'm optimistic that we're in a good place getting those funds pulled over, and we can get back to preventing radon-induced lung cancer in our state. Thank you.
We do have one question from our radiation expert, Dr. Berg.
Thank you, sir. And I do want, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting personally yet, but we've sort of been dealing with this issue a little back and forth. I do want to make a point to the members here that radon is a true health problem in this state. Kentucky has one of the highest rates of radon in the nation. And radon actually does cause, statistically, 20% of the lung cancers in this state. So mitigating radon in people's homes, and this is what people don't understand, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you do not know it's there until you test for it. And then once you test for it, if you find the rates are high, you're supposed to mitigate. You're supposed to put in systems that takes this gas out of your home. And then you have to confirm that those systems are working. And this is something, honestly, that's very, very near and dear to my heart. Not only because I've been a radiation safety officer for many hospitals, and this is part of what I do, but because for me personally, one of the people in my life that had a tremendous, tremendous impact on me died from a radiation-induced lung cancer. So it's something I really care about. And my question, I have several questions. The surge funding that you're anticipating receiving, what's the dollar amount?
It's approximately $1.8 million over a 3-year period.
$1.8 million. And it seems to me the board has two, not necessarily dueling because they can go together, but two missions. One is to make sure that the people who work in this state do a good job, know what they're doing, are licensed and are supervised. But the other, and this is the one that I really, really care about personally, is getting the message out to people in this state that this is a risk that you can actually control. This is something that you as a homeowner can take control of and minimize the risk to you and your family. So I'm going to just end with a plea that we get this money, that we get to work, that we start doing the very important work in this state that I haven't seen done for years now. So thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Senator Berg, Dr. Berg, and I can assure you that this board will be accountable for being a good steward of those funds. The EPA has somewhat coupled the funds, the regulatory side, and the certificate or the public education and outreach, which is why they were brought in or will be brought into the Board of Radon Safety. And I think the commitment here is to follow best practices of other states. There are some other states that are doing things really, really well. And a lot of those are because of the American Lung Association, and that's the common denominator here. We want to lean on that experience. And so when I'm back here next year, I hope that this discussion, I suspect that this discussion will be much different. We'll be talking about results instead of frustrations. Thank you.
All right, we're going to entertain 3 more quick questions. Senator Boswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So clearly, a large majority, based on your own testimony today, is of lung cancer patients or cases is a result of smoking, secondhand smoking, or, in my opinion, it's going to get worse now with all this vaping that's going on. So these comprise, I would believe, probably the large majority of cases that have to do with lung cancer. And certainly, in my opinion, these should be the top priority. The thing that I'm concerned about is we were talking about the word regulation. And in regards to that, I have two questions. Do you have statistics, Senator Berg touched on this, about the 20%, that directly tie radon to lung cancer where there was no second or other factors, contributing factors such as smoking or secondhand smoking or vaping? Then the second question I have, and that's one of my big concerns, is that I'm involved in some real estate transactions, and what I'm seeing more and more, people, for example, have owned a house that may be their life savings, and there's been cases where the real estate was not able to be sold because of representations by a home inspection company that there were radar problems. And it's a very serious concern to me for property owners around the state of Kentucky that somehow or another their real estate damages, their real estate property values would be unnecessarily affected by new regulations.
Thank you for those questions. In regard to your first question, yes, I am happy. I will gather that information and send it to you, Senator. There are several studies. Probably the most prominent was the University of Iowa, where ladies in farm households that were able to be tracked over years and years, actually decades, they were able to calculate the risk. And that's available, as well as several other research publications that I'm aware of. So I'll gather that information and make sure that I get it to you. In regard to your second question, I think that that's an educational issue. We need to do a better job of educating our real estate colleagues that finding elevated concentrations of radon in a building is not detrimental to the real estate transaction unless it's presented improperly. And I know that there's a clear disclosure now that the Real Estate Commission we worked with several years ago to have implemented. And it really comes back to making sure that we're working with our home building and our real estate colleagues to make sure that those types of things don't happen. It's very cost effective to put a radon mitigation system in most properties. In our state, I would estimate somewhere between $1,200 to $2,000, and that should not, absolutely not be a factor in whether to purchase a home or not.
Thank you.
All right, Representative Bratcher.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation today. I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on something. In March 2003, we passed a joint resolution directing or having the governor direct these funds to the board. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Have those funds been directed to the board yet?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you.
Representative Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Bratcher just kind of covered my topic here, but do you know by chance what the holdup is?
I do not. I obviously can't speak for the governor's office, although I did indicate earlier that I'm aware that agency of record is expected to be forthcoming here sooner than later.
Have they given you a target date, or?
I have not been provided with a target date. No,
have
sir.
they given you any reason why they have not provided those funds as of yet?
No, again, I can't speak on behalf of that office.
I just want to know if they provided it to you.
No.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, sir. You did a good job. While you're taking a seat, KET, Public Alert System. When you all get up here, introduce yourself and 10 or 15 minutes, that be all right?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Is it on automatically, or do you press? I guess it's on. Well, thank you, Chairman Girdler and Chairman Thomas and members of the committee for this opportunity for us to come before you. I'm Julie Schmidt, Senior Director of External Affairs with KET.
Hello, I'm Tim Bischoff. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at KET.
We'll make this very brief. We appreciate the opportunity, as I said. So Kentucky Educational Television, KET, was established by the Kentucky General Assembly in 1962, and we've been broadcasting statewide since 1968, which is about 55 years. KET is the Commonwealth's only statewide media network and operating and providing programs and educational services 24/7, 365. Today, more than 2 million Kentuckians each week count on KET's programs and educational services. We are proud to serve all Kentuckians with high-quality programming, local Kentucky-centric productions, including the arts, history, and culture, public affairs that are focused on local issues and concerns, and access to the Kentucky General Assembly, your committee meetings and proceedings, along with the governor's state of addresses and more. In addition, KET's statewide network, our broadcast network, supports and provides vital links to the Commonwealth's Emergency Communications Network. And we're grateful for the governor and the Kentucky General Assembly for the support for the Kentucky Local Emergency Alert System, capital investment that is making possible improvement in our ability to provide local emergency warning and alerts and to provide service in rural and underserved areas. And Tim Bischoff, our CTO, will give you a little bit more information about this new product.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this project with you. The same network that Julie described, KET's network that brings you programming, all those transmitters and towers, it also plays an important role in ensuring that weather officials and first responders, law enforcement agencies, and others can maintain communications with each other and with the public in emergency and critical situations. This is the KET network, this map right here, and the green dots are KET's 15 transmission sites. You can see there the yellow dots are Q's towers that KET relies upon for many of our 124 microwave hops that take our signal all the way around the state of Kentucky. And this network, this microwave path, it has three different paths, north, east, and west. And then you can see there they travel in loops. And that's really important because if there's an outage in one direction, the transmission path can go in the other direction around the state to reach all of the transmitters. Or if there's an outage and that transmission path fails, we can also pick up KET sites from nearby sites. So you see Murray and Paducah are nearby one another, so we can actually retransmit automatically off of one of those other sites. And I like to say that makes the network in some ways self-healing, and it makes it redundant, and it makes it a very reliable network. Each site also has uninterrupted power, it has a generator and cooling systems, and all of that technology makes sure that in a case of an emergency where we lose commercial power, and in a weather emergency, you're likely to lose commercial power, right? So in those instances, we're able to keep these sites powered for up to 72 hours with existing fuel, or with fuel deliveries, we can keep these sites powered indefinitely, and we can make sure that all the communications are up and running. And that, again, ensures uninterrupted communications and operations 24/7, 365. So because of this, KET's tower infrastructure also provides this reliable, redundant support for many public safety agencies. So in addition to issuing the alerts to viewers directly on KET's channels, our network of towers, which are up to 1,000 feet tall, and that's a lot taller than a typical radio or mobile communications cell phone tower. These are very tall towers, and they make them very useful. They house antennas, and we have transmitters on the ground for a variety of local, state, and federal agencies and their mobile radio services that they use to talk to one another in their cars or on their person. So you can see some of these entities here, federal and nearby, the ATF, the Emergency Alert System that I'm going to tell you about in just a minute, the FBI, FEMA, Emergency Management here in Kentucky, Forestry, the Q's Network, National Guard, State Police, the Transportation Cabinet, the National Weather Service, NOAA Weather Radio. If you have a NOAA Weather Radio in your house like I do, that transmission here in Kentucky, it's coming off of a KET tower. And KET maintains those weather radio systems across the state on those towers so we can help to keep people safe in emergencies. Also, local sheriff departments and emergency management officials, the Secret Service, as well as wireless emergency alerts are coming through the KET signal. So KET has recently, this is the project that Julie's referencing, we've recently installed emergency alert system receivers and encoders at all 15 of our transmission sites statewide. Now, older broadcasting technologies that were installed at KET's transmitters about 20 years ago, they actually weren't capable of issuing localized emergency alerts. But if we go back even further in history, way back to analog TV, when we all had those tube TVs, it actually, this is a strange thing, was simpler with that technology to localize those alerts 25 to 30 years ago than it was with digital. But with new technologies that have just come out in the last few years, KET has been able to harness these technologies, and we designed and installed a new alerting system that can provide these local tornado or severe weather alerts on KET's broadcast channels to viewers who are watching. And so by targeting that alert locally is really important because we avoid over-alerting. Such as alerting viewers in hazard about a weather emergency that might be happening in Murray. And that can be dangerous because if an alert is not relevant to a viewer, it's sort of like the boy who cried wolf. And people kind of start ignoring that sort of thing if something's not relevant to their location. But local relevant alerts, they're trusted and can provide life-saving warnings in emergency situations. I also want to share with you that the federally mandated Kentucky State Emergency Communications Committee, this is mandated by the FCC, it's led by the Kentucky Broadcasters Association, recently developed a new statewide emergency communications plan. And this plan defines how EAS alerts are relayed from TV or radio stations to other TV or radio stations throughout a daisy chain broadcast system. So if you've heard those alert tones on the radio or on TV, and then that's followed by an emergency alert message, you're hearing the EAS system. And this was approved by the FCC recently, and KET's role in the plan was elevated to be the state primary source for EAS because of the reliability of KET's infrastructure and our direct communications link to the Kentucky Emergency Operations Center. So to summarize, this newly launched Kentucky Local Emergency Alert System provides local warning and alerting for viewers. It's reliable, it's redundant, it's statewide. It supports local TV and radio broadcasters, and it's strengthening those paths between those who originate alerts and those of us who disseminate alerts. And we're serving the Commonwealth with all of these forms of emergency communications. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Senator Williams.
Just a quick question. I see as normal, though the rest of the state is looped in, Northern Kentucky is not. But my real question is, what is an IP path?
What is an IP path? So that's Internet Protocol, and that's sending communication using Internet Protocol rather than an analog communication. So it's basically the way that all of our networks and phones communicate with one another. And it's that technology applied to broadcasting.
Okay. Interesting. We'll have a discussion offline about that. Thank you.
That's the man that spells his name J-G-E-X asking that question. So maybe a little while trying to explain it to him. All right? Thank you. Representative Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the risk of asking a question that is, possibly not germane to the discussion, or maybe is too technical in nature, I have the privilege of having KET in front of me. So I had a question about citizens being able to access streaming services in particular. You made some remarks earlier about how you serve all Kentuckians, and we know that things have changed a lot. We spend a lot of time watching on our phones or casting to televisions, and one of the things that my constituents have expressed to me is that whenever they go to watch, say, Kentucky Tonight, they are unable to watch it because it pops up that you have to have location services enabled. And we understand. I'm not quite sure what the rationale is in restricting that to just Kentuckians. I understand we pay for the service, but beyond that, even when folks are going ahead and enabling location services, they're still not able to access it. So I wanted to pass that along to you, that there's an issue there, because there were a lot of folks that were wanting to have access to what I consider to be very vital information in the last couple of months, that they weren't able to see it, and I just wanted to pass that along. I think that's something that maybe could be looked at. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. And
Yeah, thank you for that comment. We work to, let me address your first question of why the geo restriction is in place. The channel that broadcasts both Kentucky Tonight but also national programming is the same channel. We're required contractually for programs that are national programs that they're streamed only in Kentucky. We actually don't have the rights contractually to stream those outside of Kentucky. We've put technology in place to turn off that geo restriction during local programming, but if that technology is malfunctioning, we're going to go back and take a look at that and make sure if folks are having problems that it's actually properly turning off.
thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
Good, Dr. Berg.
Thank you again. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the work you do. You mentioned that we have 72 hours worth of sustainability, beyond which we need to refuel. Do we ever foresee any problems with refueling in this state? You know, I work with emergencies. I work, when things go really, really bad. And after 72 hours, I do not think we would want to lose the ability to do public service announcements. So what's our plan B and plan C for that?
That's a good question. We have not run into the situation where we've not been able to make a fuel delivery. But I think exploring that plan C and plan D is something that we need to do, certainly.
You might recall in Murray many years ago, there was a tremendous ice storm that came through, and KET was able to stay on the air for, I think it was at least a week, when everything was shut down. So that's something we do need to look at redundancy. But I just wanted to share that with you, that's top of mind.
Thank you. But that redundancy, that ability, regardless of whatever horrendous circumstances we're facing, is something to be considered, something we should be prepared for. So thank you very much.
Agreed.
Last question, Representative Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at your slide number 3 here. Do you guys have any plans to update or modernize, for using your word, this daisy chain?
So there are multiple technologies that we can use to reach these transmission sites. And at some of the sites, so this is a microwave path that we use across the state. Microwave, on the one hand, is a relatively old technology, although these are digital microwaves, not analog microwaves. And it's a fairly established and reliable technology because it's point-to-point, it's fixed, so you can get the signal to these locations. We have installed internet connections and fiber at some of these locations where we're able to transport the signal often as a backup into some of our locations on the internet. But not all the locations have internet access because some are incredibly rural, up on mountains, not even near necessarily near a path. So that's something that we continue to explore, of having an alternate path using the internet to reach these sites as far as the signal transmission.
Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at it and I see vulnerabilities, using the daisy chain kind of concept. And, when you hear about the internet was designed by DARPA to, if any 1 or 2 nodes go out, you can go around them. And, I did not know if you had the capability to change the microwaves instead of going one direction to go another direction to
Yes,
kind of come up with a net.
Right, absolutely. And this system unto itself is independent of the internet. So these paths that you see on this map are using the Q's microwave radio network across the state, which gives us that, you're exactly correct, that anything connected to the internet becomes a vulnerability. And that gives us another level of connection, and also to reverse the path and to come from the other direction.
I'm more looking at even redirecting. So from what I'm understanding, you got the capability to shoot a microwave from Bowling Green to Elizabethtown if need be, or to Owensboro if need be.
No, sir. So the way that the paths are connected, they are along these lines, and must see. They physically have to see each other across these lines of the microwave path, and to go directly from Bowling Green to Elizabethtown, for instance, we would have to put intermediate hops between each of those paths if we were to make that direct link.
All right, so back to my original question, do you have any plans to update this system at all? I mean, I know that you're updating the software, but update things that you have more flexibility instead of from a daisy chain going to more of a network and internet.
Not at this point, but it is something we could certainly look at and explore.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all. While you're making your way back, I would ask for, real short.
Have you considered, since Leo is up there about 100 miles, Starlink or Amazon's new satellite services to link these?
We've watched the rollout of that technology. We don't have any immediate plans in using the low orbit satellites for transmission, but it's certainly something that's becoming more prominent that we're keeping an eye on. Certainly cost and balancing cost is very important as we look at how we get the transmissions to all of these sites as well. Yes, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Right now, I'd like to ask for Stacy Brantley and Kyle Brundage come to the table. And this is about VA benefits. And when you get here, just make sure you got a green light, and that means go. And we got Representative Bratcher joining them. So feel free to start and introduce yourself. Thank you.
My name is Stacy Brantley.
My name is Kyle Brundage. I'm Stacy's son.
Representative Steve Bratcher.
So my dad is retired Sergeant Major Frank Brantley. He served 30 years in the Army. Last year, he needed to go to an assisted living from his home. I contacted the Radcliffe Veterans Center. So this was in October of last year. I went in, toured the facility, spoke with the admissions coordinator there. We got my dad on the waiting list for the facility. But over the course of a whole year, I just felt like I wasn't really getting informed of where he truly was on the list or how long it might take. Initially, I was told it would probably take a couple of months. It was basically due to staffing issues, that they basically couldn't hire enough nurses or aides to accommodate, how many residents that could reside there. So I actually toured the side of the facility that was empty, which was about 60 beds. So I think the facility holds about 120 beds. And like I said, they told me it was only about half full at that time. But as long as the staffing remained consistent, it would probably take a couple months. My dad actually passed away last month. He had been waiting a year to get into that facility, and apologize, it's pretty fresh. But like I said, over the course of a whole year, I was communicating through email with the admissions coordinator there, and I always kind of got the same story. If there's any updates with your dad or his medical condition, please let me know. And of course, I would do that, and I would always hear the same story. Okay, I'll get his records. I'll present it to the admissions committee, and I'll be able to give you an update. So this went on a few times because over the past year, my dad's health did keep declining. So about halfway through, about say May of this year, I asked, hey, is there any way to tell like where he is on this list? I mean, is he like number 10? Is he number 52? And that question was pretty much just kind of dodged. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something to the effect about because my dad's health was declining, she didn't know that their staffing could meet his acuity level. I just kind of felt like this was kind of discriminatory. But by this point, he was in a nursing facility in Elizabethtown. And, if this is a nursing facility and he's in a nursing facility, why would they not be able to meet his acuity level? So anyway, I didn't want to just push too much. I felt grateful that, hey, he's on the list. She's telling me he's still on the list. Every time I tell her that something's going on with him, she's saying she's got the records and needs to present it to the admissions committee. So the last incident that happened was in August of this year. My dad had to go to the hospital. He had actually been on a wound vac for a pressure ulcer on his bottom, but he had been on it for a few months, and it healed, and he got off the wound vac. So of course, I was pretty happy about that. Emailed again the admissions coordinator there at the facility, and she was like, "Okay, I know this. I looked over it on the way here. It was dated August 21st." She said, "I did see your email. I got his records. I'll have to present this to the admissions committee again. And when a bed is available, we can update you further at that time." That was the last email that I ever got from her. And like I said, he passed away on October the 10th. Yeah, it was just pretty frustrating to know that he went a whole year and we never knew where he was on that list or when he was going to get in. Yeah, I just wanted to be able to tell that story on his behalf. I toured the facility, and actually his old roommate from his facility in E-Town is now in the Radcliffe Veterans Center, and I went to see him the other day. It is a really nice facility, and when you're kind of used to going in the traditional nursing facilities, and I was there every single day, no matter where my dad was, hospital, facility, I was with him every single day for a few hours. It's quite rough to go and visit these facilities, and I mean, it's a lot to take in. And I knew the facility there in Radcliffe was, extremely nice. To me, it was more of a assisted living feel, not like, a nursing facility, but he had actually started out in a assisted living, and yeah, they were nicer. I mean, they were like your own little apartment. So to me, the Radcliffe Veterans Center felt just like a true assisted living. So, I was really anxious for him to get in there. But yeah, I just could never get an answer of where he was on the list or when he might get in. And this went on to pretty much like exactly a whole year.
Thank you. I'm very sorry to hear.
Thank you.
About your father.
Thank you.
Representative Bratcher, Kyle, Want to add?
There's not a whole lot of things that I can add. I mean, a lot of us are going to feel the same way, but there is part of me inside that I'm left wondering that the level of care that he could have received in this facility might have enabled him to at least had a greater end of life for him. That's all.
Representative Bratcher?
Yeah, it's multiple calls to my office, and Senator Deneen's office inspired us to go ahead and start looking into these issues, and that's what prompted us to visit all the nursing homes in the state to try to have a little more understanding of what's going on and why we have so many beds open that are not being utilized by our veterans.
Thank you. Representative Hart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, I don't know, it's maybe not really directed to you guys, and y'all might not be able to answer. Might be more appropriate to ask the commissioner, but I'm just curious how many veterans per facility are being turned away due to the short staffing issue. Did you, Representative Bratcher, when you all was on your visits, did you gather any of that information, or should I?
Yeah, it was my understanding from looking at all these facilities that there was a shortage of staffing, and there was one of the reasons was pay for nurses, and so they came to the legislative body increased the pay for nurses to be very competitive with local hospitals, and not only that, we also allowed for contract nurses without putting a cap on the amount of pay for contract nurses if needed, whatever was needed for these veteran homes. And that was my understanding. And to this date, we have about 340 beds statewide across 4 different nursing homes that are not being utilized, with a waiting list for veterans to get in at each one of them.
Were you, from your research, was you able to determine the increase in wages and the release of the salary cap? Has that helped at all, or are they still struggling to get staff? Or
it's my understanding that they're still struggling to get staffing. However, if you look at the nursing homes in other states, such as Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, their occupancy rate is at 85 and 90%. So it tells me it's not a nation issue, it's a Kentucky issue.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Representative Bratcher, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to let the Department of Veterans Affairs
Thank you, Chair.
Come forward
and thank you all for your presentation. And
thank you.
I'm sorry for your phone.
Thank you.
As y'all come forward, there'll be some questions, and Senator Deneen and Representative Bratcher has put a lot of time and effort in checking these out, and that's the reason that you're here today. And we would like to be able to hear some reports, and I'm sure they're going to have some questions for you. So you may introduce yourself, and thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. It's always an honor to be here entering our 25th year of service to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I'd like to say a happy Veterans Day to all of the veterans here and those on the committee. My wife said I look like a pompous, and I'll leave it as that, wearing my medals, but I want to encourage all of you who are veterans, wear your pins, wear your medals, wear your uniform. Let's do a strong effort to show what's going on. Personally, I'm like, why would I do this? But since I've been in this job, I see why sometimes. It's never about my pride, it's but my fellow brothers. I had a better welcome than they did, okay? So show your pride this weekend. On that, sir, boat prepared. I have my Deputy Commissioner here, Juan Renal, talking update overall for KDVA, as well as the veteran service side of it. And then my Executive Director for Veteran Centers, Mark Bowman, who will talk to the Veteran Centers. Go ahead, Mark.
So I think we'll just get to the issue at hand, really, if that's okay, about admissions and the processes and the issues that we have. There's no question and we'll stipulate that right up front. We are coming out of a very difficult period of lower census and inability to fill vacancies. It's been going on for quite some time. And if you graph it, it really started in the 2015-16, and that was really the market issue of market wages. And so we've been trying to look at that and come up with creative ways to attack that for a long, long time. And then, of course, as we all know, and I won't beat this dead horse, but when COVID hit, it was like a nail in the coffin. Not only because of the concern of the veterans that we served, we stopped admissions, but also it was devastating to the workforce. And this is a well-known fact at the national and state level. So what happened is we saw a large exit from our workforce that was already starting to decline. And that continued really up until 22. We started to see some recovery from the COVID aspect of it. And I gotta share with you the census decline was drastic. It was not minor. You know, if you look at the census levels back in the 14, 15, 16, and you look at the census levels as we came out of COVID, it was drastic. As well as the workforce issue, because it was not only then at that point the depletion of what we had and the difficulty of having market wages. It's absolutely, we saw nursing staff that were not coming back into the marketplace. They just weren't. And there's national statistics, objective data that will show that. And I'm tickled to death and glad that some states and some places aren't having problems, but the fact is there's a lot that are. And one of the statistics, it was a national statistics that I just read recently. Well, I've known it recently, but 55% of skilled nursing facilities have decreased or limited admissions because of staffing and labor issues. I mean, that's a national data that we just can't get around. So let me fast forward though. Absolutely, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we have to do it as a team because there's no one ticket or one thing that we can wave a magic wand and do this. So some of the things, and it was mentioned earlier, and it was absolutely, we appreciate the support of not only the legislators, but our partners in state government to try to come up with some creative ways. One was the personal services contract. In essence, instead of spending high dollar amount to agency staff, we, with your all support, got a legislative change that allowed us to hire nurses first and foremost under a personal services contract. That's without benefits. And because in today's market where, you know, I'm kind of old school and I went to a place and stayed forever and looked for the benefits, today it's taking care of your family, taking care of your kids. So what we did on the PSCs is we said, okay, we're going to offer this without benefits. And we had a great gain. In fact, it was so good that we expanded that through another legislative change to the nursing assistants. So that was a stopgap issue. It was never the answer to all of our issues. It was, let's look outside the box. So at the same time, we also understand that to recruit nurses, because, and I'll stipulate this, and this is not going to be a shock to anybody, as much as we want all nursing staff and nurses to come to long-term care, it simply doesn't happen. I wish I could say that we are the employer of first choice. It simply does not happen. So we love our mission. We love team members that are committed to our mission. But we are what I sometimes call a niche employer. It doesn't mean that we do any less of a job than anybody else, but you got to want to be there for a certain reason. So we expanded our out-of-the-box thinking to a nurse loan repayment program. We got legislation passed with your all support to say, hey, for nurses, we may not be the first employer of choice, but guess what? At that time, the average debt, student debt for a nurse coming out of school was about $32,000. We did the stats on that. So we got legislation passed, and then we funded a nurse loan repayment program. So if somebody comes to work for us and stays 1 year, they become eligible for a payment of up to $10,000 to their educational lending institution. So you can see where we're going with this. We established that for a potential 4 years. So if somebody comes to us and has a $32,000 debt, or let's just say $40,000 for easy math, if they come and do a year's eligibility with us, we're going to pay their lending institution 10. The next year, 10 more. The next year, 10 more, up to 4 years. Guess what? That allows them to retire debt. And how many people do you know that have the yoke of debt around your shoulders that you can hardly ever get out of? Now, the reason I bring that up is that wasn't the answer to our problem. But incrementally, we are trying our best and working with our partners to do those things to make a difference. Now, fast forward, and hopefully this will end on a somewhat positive note, but just like that family, my heart breaks for their loss and their inability to get into one of our facilities because of these issues, because there's two things that we care about, and that is taking care of our veterans that we have in our house, so to speak, and then access to those that need them. Is it a perfect system? Does everybody get in? No. I hate it. We're not in the business of saying no, but we are in the business of dealing with the reality that we have to deal with, and we're committed to doing that in the best fashion we can. So this year, in June and July, we got the great news that Representative Brancher talked about. Through everybody's support, we actually got the movement for our nursing staff to a special entry rate. And so in the state system, as you all know, you have a minimum pay and a mid pay. And mid's actually the max, right? So they allowed us to go to that SER, which is actually the mid pay. And it made a huge difference in nursing. Again, does it fix our problem? No, but it moved the needle. Not only did it move the needle there, but we also were allowed to use some restricted fund carryover to help fund locality premiums. Because even with that SER and in some other areas that didn't get that SER, that special entry rate movement, we have to devote some money because there's other ancillary staff inside of nursing that are critical to do what we do. Housekeeping, laundry, dietary, every piece of that is just as important for what we do to that for that veteran. And that includes activities, social services, the whole gambit. So fast forward to that, we have actually seen upward movement. And if I could show you a graph, a long time ago, our census was there. We hit bottom, and with these changes, we're starting to come out of it. Is it as fast as any of us want? No. For this year, we've done 150 admissions, but we've lost 110 veterans. It's a function of how sick we have our veterans coming into our doors. So the net gain is not near as quick as we want, but we're moving and moving in the right direction. We hope we skyrocket, and we will continue to do and partner with anybody that can help us come up with ideas on how to bring people into our fold to join our mission of loving and caring for our veterans, because that's what we're about. That's what this body's about. And I know that everybody out here in the community and as family members, that's what they're committed to. So that's the overview, and I'll be glad to answer any specific questions.
I'm gonna the two gentlemen that did a lot of this inquiring about the veterans' homes, Senator Deneen and Representative Bratcher. I'm gonna let Representative Hart ask a question, then I'm gonna turn it over to Senator Deneen and Representative Bratcher, and I'm sure they've got some questions and some grave concerns. So anyway, Representative Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've touched on some of what I was going to ask. My previous question, I'm concerned about people being turned away with the short staff and stuff. But you were talking about some graphs. Is there some graphs or hard data that you could give to us to kind of give us some numbers so we can get even a more clear picture of what's going on with that?
Yes, sir. I would be glad to provide both the numbers and then the graphical representation, because that graphical representation, if I may just expand for a second, the graphical representation of both the staff decline and increase in numbers right now that we're seeing it maps perfectly with our census. You put the two graphs together and it speaks the volumes. And so we want that upward trend to continue, and that's where all of our efforts will be.
Well, that would be great if you could share that with
Yes,
us.
sir.
I appreciate it.
I will provide it. Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for being here. Mr. Bowman, you've obviously are well versed in our nursing homes and our veterans KDVA. You know, you've also received many compliments from staff members as we visited, went out and visited. They spoke highly of you and your efforts, and I appreciate you updating us. I represent the 10th District. We have approximately 13,000 veterans in the district, and it includes Fort Knox. We have approximately 239,000 veterans in the state of Kentucky. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of go down a few things before I turn it over to some others to dig into some questions. Quite frankly, we want to hear from the commissioner. I talk to our veterans and I hear their concerns and their frustrations with the VA and with access to care. Commissioner, I hope you're familiar with President Harry Truman's famous placard on his desk. Are you? Do you know what that says?
Not sure, sir. Please.
It says the buck stops here. The buck stops with you, sir, at the top when it comes to the Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs. We are here as a committee, and I hope to provide oversight, sir. And I hope that you can appreciate, as a leader, the value of oversight and accountability. Most importantly, we hope you understand the importance of communication. I, like many of our veterans, are frustrated. We're angry. We're angry. We're disappointed. Our veterans deserve the best we can provide. You know, there's an old saying, sir, with leadership. You lead, you follow, or you get out of the way. And there's a time and place for all three. If you're not leading and you're not following, that leaves us one choice. Do you believe in the importance of oversight and accountability and clear communication of any mission, collaboration efforts, and a comprehensive improvement plan, sir? That's a simple yes or no answer. Do you believe in that?
Senator Deneen, thank you for asking that question, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry. Senator Deneen, thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it. And also, as you stood by me 2 days ago as we honored two falling
I just want a simple yes or no, sir. I don't need a word salad. Do you believe in the oversight and accountability and communication?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And sir, can I please add?
No, I'd like to move on. We've got a lot of things to do, and I'll ask you several questions.
I understand, sir.
This committee is here to provide that oversight for your department.
And I appreciate it.
Last week, in a rare appearance, and I say a rare appearance, sir, because the perception is, as you've been invited to several committee meetings in the past, that legislators, the perception is he's not coming. He won't come. Now, I've seen you at some committee meetings, but I've also seen a lot of second in charge and third in charge. But we want to hear from you. It's important. It's important that we have the person that is in charge answer these questions.
And I respect that, sir.
Last week, you made a statement time and time again before another committee meeting dealing with the census and the access to these care centers. You consistently said this time and again, and I wrote it down because it stood out to me. Don't ask us to lower our standards. Don't ask us to lower our standards. You said it time and time again. I think you misinterpreted or have a misunderstanding. So I want to make it very clear. We're not asking you to lower your standards, sir.
Thank you.
We are demanding you meet the standards.
And we always will, sir.
We're asking you to meet the standards of every commissioner that's come before you. Not only do we demand that you meet those standards, but we demand that you exceed those standards going forward. It is important, sir. Communication is the key. We, as a committee, cannot determine how to help our veterans if we are not hearing those concerns from you as a commissioner. We want you here. We don't want others here that will say, we'll get back to you, or we can't answer that question at this time. We need you here. This summer, several colleagues and I made personal visits to our VA centers, and I want to applaud your staff. They're outstanding.
They are, sir.
The facilities are wonderful.
They're awesome.
But I have some grave concerns when it comes to communicating and the occupancy and the capacity rates. We have 4 veteran centers right now. One is at 42%, 48%, 44%, and in Eastern Kentucky, 67% capacity. We have beds available. Yet we still have veterans on waiting list. We have poor communication. We have folks that are not reaching back out to those on the list. We have folks not doing personal assessments. These things are not happening. We have websites that direct. Our public is going to these websites for the Eastern Kentucky VA Center, the Western Kentucky VA Center, the Radcliffe VA Center, the Lexington Thompson Hood VA Center. 2 of the 4 have up-to-date information and are accessible. One of them has a broken link. Someone seeking to get a family member there can't access it. They can't access information. Again, this goes back to communication. Have you ever instructed any of your staff members not to communicate with their legislators, sir?
No, sir. As a matter of fact, you have been into my facilities and have answered all your questions to the best of their ability. And I've also have opened the door, and the last time I was in the committee, welcome you all to attend or visit my facilities, sir.
And that's why we went ahead and visited those on your request and that invite. And I'm
Thank you for
I'm
taking
glad
that
to
on,
do
sir.
that.
Mhm.
I'm glad to experience that. I'm glad to see our veterans. But sir, that's not what I'm hearing. When it comes to communicating with legislators, sir, when we've had staff members explain to us while visiting that when they expressed issues and they sent letters, they reached out, it was at that point in time, sir, that you visited that center and told them not to do so. That's disturbing. Good, bad, or indifferent, we expect to hear the truth, the whole truth, all the time. We have constituents that work in your VA centers. They need to always feel safe in talking to their legislators. Whether or not it's good news or bad news, we can't help if we don't know. Communication with our regular healthcare providers in the region. These communication lines are broken. They are tired of being denied when they have patients that they can send to the VA clinic or the VA center rather. And yet time and time and time again, they're told no. They're turned away. So much so, some of them have quit even contacting you and are referring patients to private care. Those communication lines need to be reestablished. It's not acceptable. We should be going into these nursing homes and these private care facilities, and we should be seeking out veterans that we know would serve well in our facilities. Those efforts need to be made. COVID is devastating for all of us. But when our veterans are in need, we should be there for them. And to say COVID is an excuse is unacceptable. Many of our VA centers have COVID wings. They have isolation areas where they could have taken in patients and kept them isolated. We did not. To this day, the Lexington Thomas and Hood facility has a COVID wing where those veterans are receiving the care they deserve. We have a heating and air conditioning unit issue that has been lingering for over a year. We haven't heard much about that until this summer. Now we hear about a $9 million request to repair the heating and air conditioning units. And that's disturbing. Because in all this time, I don't know what we've been waiting for. We need to be informed of these issues in a timely manner. That can only happen, sir, if you're here. There's lots of protocols that could have been taken into consideration and put into place in the meantime, waiting for another budget year cycle to roll around. We could have gotten estimates. We could have done a lot of things to give us a better number, to give us a general idea. It hasn't happened. When I said earlier, you lead, you follow, or you get out of the way. What I mean by follow, sir, is following the advice of those around you that have served for years with the KDVA. They're trying to help. Time and time again, when asked, what can we do to help? They've offered suggestions to the point of deaf ears. So much so, they've either quit, resigned, or retired. For whatever reason, sir, your communication has got to get better. Sir, perception is reality. We've heard all summer long about preventing suicide, the suicide rates of our veterans, addressing these issues with suicide, getting them the treatment they need, the help they need, the services they need. It is critical. Access to treatment and access in general to care is critical. If we are going to tackle this issue of suicide rates among our veterans, then we must also accept the contributing factor of the lack thereof when it comes to access. I hear this same phrase, sir, time and time again, and it hurts me to even have to repeat it. When I visit our VFWs and our American Legions and I talk to our veterans on a regular basis, there's a saying that many of them repeat, and it hurts me to have to repeat. When it comes to VA benefits, they struggle. They struggle through the red tape. They struggle to get the services they need. They often tell me, the VA denies, 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 until we quit or we die. It cuts me to the core. And I understand their frustration, and I share it. I've lived it personally with my own father. This is no longer a perception. As you heard earlier in the testimony, this is a reality that we all must face. We all must face the facts that we need to provide the funding necessary to remove barriers to access to care. Whether it's repairing the air conditioning and heating unit in a facility or doing all we can to see a comprehensive plan of recruiting of nurses and staff, we must do better. Sir, we're going to hold you accountable as we go forward. This next legislative session, I'm asking you, sir, to come before this VMAP committee every meeting. The first 10, 15 minutes will be yours. Give us an update. Tell us what's going on. Please give us a plan going forward. We want to help. We strive to help. And we want you to help us help our veterans. Our veterans deserve better, and we demand better. We will also be taking a close look at KRS 40, 320, 17, KAR 3.020. We'll be comparing our access here in the state of Kentucky to proven accesses and best practices from other states, from Washington, Wisconsin, Tennessee. We're going to compare our access and our regs to theirs, and we will be updating those, and I will be presenting those, and I hope to have that support of my colleagues to expand access and care so that we can get those facilities up and running much better than mid 40%. It's not acceptable, and we want to do better, and we want you to do better with us. Agree?
Hey, sir, follow me. You have my 4-year plan. Talk off my misperceptions, but I'm here as part of the team. And all the senators, Will Thomas, Sergeant Meredith, and Reynolds was here. Evening, sir. I know many times you called. If I didn't answer your call fast enough, my apologies, but hopefully every question, assistance to veterans was met. If not, the buck is on me, sir. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. We want you to share that plan with us on an updated basis, not every now and then, not once a year, on a regular basis. I understand you've gone to other committees on capital projects. You've gone to other committees. Sir, this is the VMAP committee. This is the Veterans Committee. We want you here. We want you to do a good job. We want to support you in those efforts. I know my colleagues have lots of questions, and I'm going to turn it over to them because some of these questions need to be answered before we leave today. Thank you, sir.
I might need to ask a couple questions myself, not of you, but of when you specify every meeting, Senator Deneen, in the session we meet opposite times, and it may be
whether or not he comes before the House committee or our Senate committee VMAP. I think it's critical that he come before one of those committees and gives us an update.
And committee chairman, if I can ask, if definitely you coordinate with my agency so I can make it to the meetings. I know I have not been here at a couple of meetings, but either in DC representing Kentucky, working with my teammates, ideas, we usually plan those things out. But KDVA, no matter what, if I catch a stroke and die, we will be here to represent. We just need to know when and where, sir. Thank you.
I was just following up, making sure that, they may meet on Tuesday and we may meet on Wednesday, and we're going to meet every week. And
understand, sir.
Yeah,
understand. We're here to help.
Representative Bratcher, you have anything to add? Quickly,
I'll just say that to say that I'm upset is an understatement. To see our veterans every day trying to get into a nursing home when we have open beds, and then we say we can't do it when other states are doing it, when surrounding nursing homes are full, but our veteran nursing homes are at 50% at best, is outrageous. It just every time that you've asked or we come before us. We've given you more money for nurses. We've given you more money for heating, air, whatever you ask. But there's not been an ask. And when we try to communicate, it's not been there. So we've got to get better. And I know you probably think this is a harsh meeting, but to be honest with you, we're here to try to help and support this. And I'm committed to making this better and to helping with that.
Sir, I appreciate your help and support. As I mentioned in the previous committee, we have it in the budget to move forward. I've always appreciated the support of the committee. I would tell you I have one of the best staff and agency in the state and the region. I've visited
No
all
question.
of my partners.
They are out. They
Yes.
are awesome.
But,
and the
but
facilities are excellent.
I do want to highlight this. If you ever see my deputy, if you see Mark here, if you see my HR assistant, Kelsey, who's sitting in the back, here representing me as I'm lobbying for the state somewhere else, that's how much trust I have in individuals. We respect you. We want the best in front of you. Our goal is to take care of veterans. And just to share with you, this is interestingly one of the most collaborative period of time, both at VA, federal VA, all of the state agencies, our state agencies within, when I say state agency first, all my counterparts in the state, as well as all the veteran service organizations are coming together to solve these problems. Our state conference in August was an excellent example. You know, we had 5 of the top VA representatives to come talk to our veterans. You know, we couldn't get the Secretary of VA, but he sent his Deputy Chief of Staff. We have the Veteran Experience Officer here. The Intergovernmental Relation Team, General Huntley, retired Huntley, a Kentucky boy, has been a collaborative partner in this process. Mark sits on national boards in his lane.
Sir, I'm sure you're doing good in other areas, but we're focused on this one issue right now. We got other people to ask questions.
Yes, sir.
Who was
Thank
next?
you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you guys came up, we had a mother and a grandson testify to us trying to learn what the hope was that they might have of getting their father and grandfather into the facility. And to summarize it, if I summarize it properly for them, I hope I do, the answer was they couldn't get an answer. Do you have any reasoning for why that might be the case?
Yes, sir. Oh, I don't have the answer. That here's the reality, and as we talked about, the staffing vacancy issues fluctuate. They absolutely do. So the ability to bring new veterans in can change daily. And one of the things I will share, and this is just the way that the approach is, when we look at admissions, we do not use a numerical waiting list. We simply don't. And the reason being is if we have 10 veterans that need placement, one's at home, one's at another nursing facility, and one's in a hospital, we do our best to try to make sure we meet the needs of the one that's not getting any care first and foremost. Then we move on down. Is it perfect, and do we always make the right? No, and I hate it. Again, as we said, we're committed to care and access, and we want to work with everybody to improve on that. But in essence, that's how it can fluctuate. So if somebody, and we've, in 10 years I've been here, we teach our staff, and number one, I want to apologize if they're not getting back, and I'll address that because that's absolutely not acceptable. Even if it's bad news, they need to be communicating to the people that we serve, and that's the veteran and their families. So I apologize, and I will address that. But the bottom line, they may not come up and say, hey, we're going to get you in 2 weeks, you're 6 on the line. It just simply does not work that way. And I think what sometimes they do out of good intent is maybe try not to make sure they build the expectation up if it's not met. Is that right, wrong, or otherwise? That's my thought on that. And that's the way we have those discussions. Is that somewhat
You did answer the
addressed?
question. I will just state this, that is a travesty. That family of a 30-year veteran, which means he's a combat veteran, can't get a simple answer. And if it's happening once, it's happening time and time and time again, and it's unacceptable.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir,
you,
and
Mr.
we-
Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Thank you. So if my question is going to be answered by the chart you've agreed to provide through Representative Hart's request, go ahead and please feel free to stop me. But I also received some letters about a shortage of nursing staff and the inability of veterans to get into some of our facilities. Now, after some of the things that you spoke about, like some of the perks, some of the raises, I reached back out, spoke to some of my local local veterans departments, and also the nurses that had reached out to me. And it seemed to be very helpful, some of the things that were implemented. But my question is, you said that the needle was moved. Is that only with regard to retention? Are we seeing, is there something more we need to do to help with recruitment in order to move the needle further? I guess my question is the needle, have we stopped, and do we need to do something a little more to move the needle to make sure that we have a steady income of nurses so that we can also increase our admissions?
Yes, ma'am. Excellent. And the graph will help represent the movement of the needle. Okay. But no, we'd never stop. We can't stop because incremental gains don't get us to where we want to be, and that's the ultimate access for our veterans and filling these facilities back up. So there are two issues, and the nurse loan reprogram is a retention issue, but the movement in the SER and the locality premium is on the recruitment side. We need to do more marketing, and we have a marketing plan to do that, but is it going to fill all of our vacancies? Only time is going to tell, right? But we're going to keep charging hard with that because we have to continue to fill vacancies. I hope within the next 6 months or a year that we're so full that we have to ask for more staff to have more veterans if we need to. That would be a great problem to have, would it not? And I think I've got a feeling after working with you all and also what we've heard today, we'd all be glad to go to the table and ask that. And I hope and pray that that's the case.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you providing that information. I think it'll be very helpful. Yes, thank you.
My good doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you guys for the presentation. First, I just want to make a comment that I don't know that everybody in the room is actually noticing, but it seems that there is a consensus that the quality of nursing care that you're offering your veterans is higher than the quality of nursing care that they're able to get in the surrounding community. And that, I think people should acknowledge, if that's the truth, that says a hell of a lot about what you're doing. So thank you. My second question, which really I think gets to the crux of the issue. I mean, I have other questions. I wouldn't mind, I don't understand what the state responsibility versus the federal responsibility for these veterans is, those type of things. I have questions. I have questions about that. But my real cut to the bones question, for you to fully fund your available nursing home beds, let's say there were nurses available, there were nurses' aides available, that these people existed, what would it cost you to hire them to fully open your facilities to 100% capacity? Because that's honestly what these people need to know. Can we afford to do this, and what would it cost? So that's my question. Ideal world, these people were available. What salaries do you need to get them to keep them and open these facilities? Thank you.
Absolutely, it can be modeled out. Now, the question is the magic number, as you well know, because even though we have made great strides, is it the magic number that will promise filling the vacancies and keeping them? We don't know until we get there. And the beauty of what our teammates are doing, and when I say teammates, I'm talking you all in support, but also state agencies, is if we go down a path and hit a number and it's still not working, we're trying to go back to the table and hit another number. Locality premiums are one of them. We have adjustments for those. So if we can take some numbers and say we think this is what it is, and then we can forecast that out to 100% census with all our vacancies, we can get that number. Is it reality? We don't know till we get there. But we will work on that. That's a lot of modeling, especially as we're navigating and doing, but we'll be glad to model that and come up with a number, knowing that there's going to be some variations, but at least this is the target, right? Because if you don't have a target, you don't know what you're going to shoot at and hit, right? So
Right.
we'll be glad to do that, ma'am.
Thank you. A follow up. I would almost think if you're staffing at 40% occupancy right now in a facility, you could take your staff numbers, whether it's costing you, bring them up to 100% by doubling them plus another, and figure it out pretty damn quickly and give us those numbers as to if we're going to do this the way it should be done, what are we talking about?
Yes, ma'am, with the 18A, and that's what we'll always target at, because we don't want to use agency, although we've had to.
No.
We want to get rid of it.
It's bad for us.
And even PSCs, that was a stopgap. So the
Right.
the whole effort here is 18A state employees that are in our mission for the right reason and getting the benefits that this Commonwealth can provide employees, get the wages up. That's our target. The rest of it, we have to manipulate it and deal with it as we move towards that. So very good point, ma'am.
Thank you.
It is my understanding that you all have been fully funded for full staff at this point. Is that correct?
Not 100% census and full staff, no, sir. We have forecasted for this upcoming budget on what we think we can achieve from a census level and the staff to meet that. So that was a target as in our budget submission.
Well, I think we need to put in our budget from now on 100%.
We will be glad to put those numbers forward.
We'll welcome whatever you would like to offer.
Representative Stalker.
Follow up to what Senator Berg was inquiring about, but I would benefit, and I think others in this room could also benefit from knowing what are the current rates that individuals our nursing staff were getting paid, and then where are they now after the raises? It's clearly not enough, but just having those basic numbers to understand.
Yes, ma'am. If it's okay, when we send the census and the number of staffing data, we'll send those comparisons of the before and what we're currently doing. I'll be glad to provide that. Yes, ma'am. Be glad to.
Representative Raymer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to give maybe a little bit of perspective from being a nurse. I've been a registered nurse for my whole adult life. I think everybody here probably realizes the nursing shortage is not something that is unique to just your facilities or unique to just Kentucky. And it is very common for even acute care hospitals to go on diversion because of lack of staff, not because of lack of beds. I also did care coordination in a hospital where I was doing transfers to other acute care facilities and to skilled nursing facilities. And very often that patient was waiting, not because all the beds were full, but because they didn't have the staff. So that is something that's very common. Now, I will say the level of occupancy rate is a little concerning based on what I think probably the average is. Now, there was a report last year that there was multiple nursing facilities in Kentucky that were shutting down whole wings. So that is something that is happening. And I think us as a General Assembly have done things to address the nursing shortage just this past session. And then also it is very concerning to hear the family talk about their frustration of trying to get their loved one in. And as far as them getting the answer on where you are on a list, I want to just give a little nursing perspective to that, because it isn't so simple as there's 10 people on the list and you're number 4, and it's hard for a non-medical person, I think, to understand that there's a lot of things that are considered when a facility is looking at who they're going to take in a transfer. It's what the need is. Can we meet that need, and where you fall compared to the other people on that list? And trying to explain that to a family who may not have any medical background is something they might not completely understand. So I just kind of wanted to give that perspective. I do hear some concerns here. I think some of the interventions that you all are doing sounds like you're trying to address them, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate for what you do for our veterans, and I've heard nothing but good things from the people who are in those facilities.
Thank you, ma'am.
Before I turn it back over to Senator Neen here in a second, I want to thank them too for helping and finding out. I want to thank you all, really do, for being here, and maybe we can, going forward, we can improve and help our veterans, because I do know that some of them are very frustrated, and during this time we've heard a lot about suicides and the things to help and the overdoses and all the things that our veterans are going through, and we need to be there in one way or a fashion. You can go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate and thank you. And I promise you, we have some great initiatives that is going on across the enterprise of KDVA. And I said earlier, this is one of the great times of collaboration with VA and the state Veteran Service Organization in the state. And just to let you know, KET will be broadcasting a veteran segment that had the state as well as KDVA and all of the state leaders together to talk issues. And you will be very impressed of the great individuals that are involved across the board. 8:30, November 13th, Monday. And again, so we're looking forward and working with you all and everyone in state government, not just the assembly, but also on the executive side as well, and in all our partners in the state. So it's always an honor to be here, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been here too long and I forgot your name. You was in Pulaski County yesterday, right?
You're talking about this war hero,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
I was not, sir.
All right, somebody was in Pulaski County.
That was Mr. Buford, sir.
Yes.
All right.
So, sir, yeah, we have people everywhere.
All right. They opened up a veteran
New office, Roger,
yes,
sir,
yes,
for
so
VPFR
thank
down
you for
there.
that. That's where I live.
Yes, sir. We were down, and Senator Deneen was there at the same time, honoring 6-7 veterans that never received their medals. So we're all over the place, doing great things. Go ahead.
It was the bow tie that got you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Session.
I'm going to let Senator Deneen wrap it up, and then we will adjourn. I was supposed to be in Families and Children, but somehow we got stuck here, but we're in good shape. And again, I hope we can improve on what we are trying to achieve for our veterans. And anyway, Senator Deneen.
First of all, I want to say thank you for being here. It's been blistering, I know. And but when we have these issues like this, sometimes it's rough that we have to address some serious concerns. And I know a lot of the committee members had a lot of questions that did not get answered today, or did we not have time to ask. But I would love to collaborate with you, sir. And the LRC staff put together a really front and back page of some of the issues and questions dealing with census data, bed designation breakdown, whether or not they're private pay, Medicaid, Medicare, VA covered, the frequency of admissions, those meetings when they occur, the makeup of the current staff at each one of our facilities, and any major renovations, and some of the communications dealing with applications submitted, the positions filled, monthly, and what platforms and things like that you are using to reach out and to advertise these availabilities. But this is a simple form, and with I will be glad to turn this over to the commissioner for his review. To the chairman for his review, and if he deems necessary, maybe we can turn this over to you, and this would help guide some of the next presentations that you come before the committee on. And I think that would answer a lot of the questions that didn't get asked today. So, again, I want to stress the importance that we're all here to do what is right by our veterans, and we all want to do a good job. We just want better communication with us so that we can figure out ways we can help. And, sir, if there's funding requests, we want to meet them. Just let us know.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate that. And like
you
I
for
said
being
earlier, follow me. Hooah.
if you're waiting for my permission, you're willing,
Motion to adjourn.
well, that too, yeah. I'm like the airplane. My bladder on me is a lot smaller than the bladder on that plane I used to fly. But anyway, you're more than welcome to have one of these, and then Senator Deneen can even bring it to you. Thank you. Entertain.